Hey guys, tonight we're going to slip through the veil of time, past the clamor and hustle of your modern lives, and into a Vietnam vastly different from the one you might imagine. Picture the mist, shrouded mountains of the Lai and Tran dynasties, where the air hums not with traffic, but with the quiet contemplation of monks and lay practitioners alike. Their hearts are tuned to a path so subtle, so profoundly integrated into daily life, that it often escapes the notice of even the most dedicated spiritual seeker. You're about to embark on a journey into the gentle heart of early, modern Vietnamese Zen, a tradition whispered down through generations, not in grand pronouncements, but in the rustle of bamboo leaves, the rhythm of a rice paddy, the brushstrokes of a scholar's poem. This isn't the Zen of koans shouted in thunderous halls, or the rigorous, often austere, practice you might associate with other traditions. This is a path of quiet integration, a seamless merging of spiritual insight with the ebb and flow of everyday existence. You probably won't survive this journey unchanged. The gentleness of this path has a way of dissolving the hardened edges we unknowingly carry. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you right now. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You find yourself standing on ancient ground, the soil beneath your feet infused with centuries of quiet devotion. It's a Vietnam far removed from the images of conflict or bustling modernity, a landscape where the breath of the Buddha still lingers, subtle yet profound. This isn't a historical lecture, but an invitation to walk alongside those who sought quietude amidst the vibrant tapestry of early, modern Vietnamese life. To feel the gentle current of their practice, guiding your own understanding. The story of early, modern Vietnamese Zen isn't a tale of isolated monasteries cut off from the world, but rather one deeply interwoven with the fabric of society, its spiritual threads holding together the very essence of Vietnamese culture. You'll soon discover that what distinguishes this tradition, what makes it so uniquely valuable for our own turbulent times, is its inherent accessibility, its lack of demanding asceticism, and its profound integration of spiritual insight with the mundane. Imagine the historical currents that converge to create this fertile ground for spiritual cultivation. To truly appreciate the subtle brilliance of early, modern Vietnamese Zen, you must first acknowledge the rich confluence of influences that shaped it. Consider the arrival of Buddhism in Vietnam, not as a sudden imposition, but as a gradual, organic assimilation. Indian Mahayana Buddhism, carried along ancient trade routes and maritime journeys, found a receptive audience. Merging with indigenous animistic beliefs and the deeply ingrained reverence for ancestors. Then came the profound influence of Chinese Chan, Zen Buddhism, which began to take root during the Tang dynasty, bringing with it a focus on direct experience, meditation, and the sudden awakening of mind. Yet, this wasn't simply an import, it was a transformation. The Vietnamese spirit, with its unique blend of practicality, poetic sensibility, and deep respect for tradition, began to subtly reshape these external influences, making them distinctly its own. You're not merely observing history, you're stepping into the lived experience of those who walked this path. Think of the Chinese Chan masters who ventured south, bringing their teachings and practices, but also encountering a land already rich with spiritual inclinations. They weren't just transmitting doctrines, they were engaging in a dynamic dialogue, a cross-pollination of ideas that yielded something entirely new. The result was not a carbon copy of Chinese Zen, but a Vietnamese adaptation, infused with local flavor, reflecting the specific social and political realities of the time. The Lai and Tran dynasties, in particular, provided a stable, flourishing environment where Buddhism, and especially Zen, was not only tolerated but actively patronized by the imperial court. This royal endorsement provided an unprecedented opportunity for the teachings to spread, to deepen, and to integrate themselves into the very heart of governance and daily life. Consider the role of the Vietnamese literati, the scholars and officials who were often well versed in both Confucianism and Taoism, yet found in Buddhism a complementary, often more profound, path to understanding existence. They weren't choosing one tradition over the other. They were synthesizing them, finding the common threads of wisdom that ran through each. This syncretic approach, this willingness to embrace and integrate diverse philosophical and spiritual perspectives, is a hallmark of Vietnamese culture, and it's nowhere more evident than in the development of its Zen tradition. You'll see how the rigorous ethical framework of Confucianism, the naturalistic spontaneity of Taoism, and the compassionate wisdom of Buddhism wove together, creating a tapestry of thought that was both robust and incredibly nuanced. This wasn't a compromise of principles, but an expansion of understanding, a recognition that ultimate truth could be approached from multiple angles. This dynamic interplay of cultures and philosophies created a fertile ground for the emergence of unique Vietnamese Zen lineages. You're on the cusp of understanding how these diverse streams flowed into a single, powerful river. The early transmission of Chan Buddhism to Vietnam saw the establishment of several schools, each with its own emphasis, its own distinct flavor. However, it was the Thiao Duong lineage, originating from the Chinese master Thiao Duong, who arrived in the 11th century, that truly began to distill and express what would become the essence of early, modern Vietnamese Zen. This school, unlike some of its more austere counterparts, embraced a less rigid approach, integrating elements of other traditions and making Zen practice more accessible to the lay community. It was a path that acknowledged the realities of daily life, the responsibilities of family and community, and sought to infuse these very activities with spiritual awareness. The brilliance of this integration lay in its practical application. You didn't have to abandon your life, your family, or your responsibilities to walk this path. In fact, it was within the very fabric of these commitments that the practice unfolded. This was a Zen for merchants, for farmers, for scholars, for emperors, a Zen that met people where they were, rather than demanding they conform to an external ideal. The Thiao Dong lineage, in particular, emphasized the intrinsic Buddha nature within all beings, suggesting that enlightenment was not something to be attained externally, but rather realized internally, through quiet contemplation and a deep understanding of one's own mind. This teaching resonated deeply with the Vietnamese spirit, which often favored practicality and direct experience over abstract dogmatism. You'll see how this emphasis on internal realization translated into a gentler, more inclusive form of practice. It wasn't about striving for a distant goal, but about cultivating awareness in the present moment. about recognizing the inherent perfection of things as they are. This shift in focus from external attainment to internal realization fostered a sense of peace and contentment that was deeply embedded in the daily lives of practitioners. The historical context, therefore, is not just a backdrop, but an active participant in shaping the unique character of early, modern Vietnamese Zen. It's the very ground upon which this gentle path was trodden, the air through which its teachings were breathed. You are now prepared to delve deeper into the specific lineages and the remarkable figures who embodied this unique spiritual journey. As you continue your journey, you find yourself drawn deeper into the heart of this ancient spiritual landscape, specifically towards the Thao Dong lineage, a stream of Zen that flows with a distinct Vietnamese current. This wasn't merely an offshoot of Chinese Chan, it was a unique synthesis, a testament to the Vietnamese genius for integrating diverse traditions into a harmonious whole. Imagine a crucible where the direct mind-to-mind transmission of Chan met the profound philosophical depth of indigenous Vietnamese thought, blending seamlessly with the practical, communal spirit of the people. This is the essence of the Thao Dong school. The story of the Thao Dong lineage begins, as many such stories do, with an individual. In this case, it was the Chinese Chan master Thao Dong himself who arrived in Vietnam in the mid-11th century. Unlike some of his more rigid counterparts, Thao Dong brought with him a more expansive and inclusive approach to Zen practice. He didn't insist on monastic seclusion as the only path to enlightenment. Instead, he emphasized the possibility of awakening within the very fabric of lay life, a revolutionary concept for the time that resonated deeply with the pragmatic nature of the Vietnamese. His teachings, therefore, weren't confined to the monastery walls, that they permeated the court, the villages, and the daily routines of ordinary people. What set the Thao Duong lineage apart was its remarkable syncretism. This wasn't a dilution of Zen principles, but rather an enrichment. It consciously integrated elements of Confucianism and Taoism, not as competing philosophies, but as complementary lenses through which to view reality and cultivate virtue. For those steeped in Confucian ethics, the Thao Duong school offered a spiritual dimension that deepened their sense of responsibility and moral rectitude. It provided a framework for understanding that true harmony extended beyond societal order to the tranquility of the individual mind. You could be a loyal subject, a dutiful child, and a compassionate neighbor, all while cultivating profound spiritual insight. Think of how this practical integration would have unfolded in the lives of people. A scholar, dedicated to the study of the classics, might find in Thao Dong's teachings a way to transcend mere intellectual understanding and directly experience the unity underlying all phenomena. The Taoist emphasis on naturalness and spontaneity, on flowing with the rhythms of life rather than forcing them, found a natural home within this Zen framework. It wasn't about rigid adherence to dogma, but about cultivating an inner state of balance and clarity that allowed one to navigate the complexities of existence with equanimity. This unique blend created a Zen of the everyday, accessible and relevant to a broader spectrum of society. You'll discover that the Thao Duong school placed a significant emphasis on mindfulness in action. It wasn't enough to meditate on a cushion. True practice involved bringing a quality of awakened awareness to every moment. Whether it was the precise movements of a farmer tending their fields, the careful strokes of a calligrapher, or the measured judgments of a court official, each activity became an opportunity for spiritual cultivation. This is a profound teaching for your own life, isn't it? The idea that every task, no matter how mundane, can be imbued with sacredness when approached with intention and full presence. The teachings of the Thiao Duong lineage often utilized poetry and literature as vehicles for transmitting profound insights. This wasn't simply an aesthetic choice. It reflected a deep cultural appreciation for the power of expression and a recognition that truth could be conveyed through evocative imagery and subtle suggestion, rather than rigid logic. Many of the lineage masters were also accomplished poets, and their verses served as direct pointers to the nature of reality, transcending the limitations of conceptual thought. Imagine reading a poem that, with a few carefully chosen words, could suddenly illuminate a truth you had previously struggled to grasp through extensive study. This poetic sensibility allowed the teachings to bypass intellectual barriers and resonate directly with the heart. Consider the role of the individual within the community. While the Thiao Duong lineage encouraged personal awakening, it never divorced the individual from their social responsibilities. In fact, true enlightenment was often seen as manifesting in one's compassionate engagement with the world. This was not a path of solitary withdrawal, but one of integrated living, where spiritual progress informed and enriched one's interactions with family, friends, and society at large. The ideal was a person who was both profoundly wise and deeply engaged, whose inner tranquility radiated outwards, benefiting all those around them. The Lai and Tran dynasties provided a uniquely fertile environment for the flourishing of the Thiao Duong lineage. Unlike some periods in history where Buddhism faced suppression, during these centuries, it enjoyed significant imperial patronage. Emperors themselves were often devout Buddhists, sponsoring the construction of pagodas, supporting monastic communities, and even engaging in spiritual practice themselves. This royal endorsement was not merely symbolic. It allowed Zen teachings to permeate the very fabric of governance and social order, influencing policies and fostering a culture of peace and spiritual inquiry. You can envision the serene atmosphere of the imperial court, where even amidst political complexities, there was a profound respect for the wisdom traditions. This period saw a remarkable blending of spiritual and temporal power. The line between monk and scholar, and even between religious leader and government official, often blurred. Highly respected monks were frequently consulted by emperors on matters of state. Their wisdom sought not just for spiritual guidance, but for practical counsel. This mutual respect fostered a society where spiritual values were deeply embedded in public life, a stark contrast to many other historical contexts. You might find yourself pondering the implications of such a society, where compassion and mindfulness were considered essential qualities for leadership. The Thiao Duong lineage also emphasized the concept of sudden enlightenment, Seven Cove, a core tenet of Chan Zen Buddhism. This wasn't a gradual accumulation of knowledge, but a direct, instantaneous realization of one's true nature. However, this sudden awakening was understood to be the culmination of diligent, consistent practice. It wasn't a magical gift, but the blossoming of a seed that had been carefully cultivated. The gentle path wasn't about avoiding effort, but about applying effort in a way that was aligned with the natural unfolding of wisdom without striving or force. you'll come to appreciate that the little-known teachings alluded to in our journey often reside in this quiet integration, this absence of dramatic pronouncements. They are found in the subtle shifts of perception, the gentle release of attachments, and the profound acceptance of what is. The Thiao Dong school, through its syncretic approach and its emphasis on lay practice, embodies this subtlety. It teaches that the path to quieting the heart isn't about escaping the world, but about fully engaging with it, yet from a place of deep inner peace. This foundational understanding of the Thiao Duong lineage sets the stage for the remarkable figure of Tran Nan Tong, an emperor monk who would further solidify and elevate this distinctly Vietnamese Zen tradition. You're building a rich understanding of the spiritual tapestry of this era, a tapestry woven with threads of wisdom from diverse sources, all brought together by the unique Vietnamese spirit. You now approach the very embodiment of early, modern Vietnamese Zen, a figure who transcends the typical boundaries of spiritual leader and temporal ruler, Tran Nan Tong. Imagine an emperor, burdened with the immense responsibilities of statecraft, yet profoundly dedicated to spiritual liberation. This isn't a mere historical anomaly, but a testament to the depth and practicality of the Zen he embraced and later so powerfully propagated. His life wasn't a retreat from the world, but a profound engagement with it, driven by a vision of harmony born from inner peace. Tran Nan Tong, born in 1258 as Tran Kham, ascended to the throne of the Tran dynasty in 1279, a period of significant turmoil and external threats. He faced the monumental challenge of defending Vietnam against multiple invasions by the formidable Mongol Yuan dynasty. You might think that such a context would leave no room for spiritual pursuits, that the exigencies of war would consume all attention. Yet, it was precisely amidst this crucible of conflict that Tran Nan Tong's spiritual resolve deepened, and his understanding of Zen began to mature. He famously led his armies to decisive victories, securing the nation's independence, demonstrating that profound spiritual insight could coexist with effective leadership and decisive action. His reign was marked not only by military prowess, but also by a deep commitment to governance rooted in ethical principles. He understood that a truly stable and prosperous society needed more than just military strength. It required moral foundation and spiritual well-being. This is where his synthesis of Zen, Confucianism, and Taoism truly began to manifest. You can see how his mind, accustomed to strategic thinking in warfare, applied a similar rigor to the integration of these philosophical systems. He wasn't merely dabbling. He was seeking a unified framework that could guide both individual conduct and national policy. For Tran Nan Tong, Confucianism provided the ethical bedrock for social order, emphasizing loyalty, filial piety, righteousness, and ritual. He recognized its critical role in fostering a stable and harmonious society, crucial after periods of conflict. Yet, he saw its limitations in addressing the deeper questions of existence and suffering. This is where Zen entered, offering a direct path to the realization of one's inherent Buddha, nature, transcending conceptual understanding and conventional morality to reach ultimate truth. He understood that true ethical action sprang not just from external rules, but from an inner wellspring of compassion and wisdom. Then came Taoism, with its emphasis on naturalness, spontaneity, and flowing with the way Diove. This resonated deeply with the Zen understanding of non-duality and letting go of artificial constructs. You can imagine him, perhaps after a day of intense strategic planning, finding solace and clarity in the Taoist concept of Wu Wei, effortless action, which informed his approach to leadership, encouraging adaptability and a responsiveness to the changing currents of life, rather than rigid control. The integration of Taoism infused his Zen with a sense of freedom and a rejection of overly rigid adherence to forms. This tripartite synthesis wasn't an academic exercise, it was a living philosophy that informed his every action. He believed that a ruler, embodying these principles, could create a harmonious society where individuals found peace and the nation flourished. He didn't just preach these ideals, he lived them. After abdicating the throne in 1293 to his son Tran Nan Tong, Tran Nan Tong fully dedicated himself to his spiritual path, an act that reverberates through Vietnamese history. This abdication wasn't a retreat from responsibility, but a deeper commitment to a different form of service. He became a Buddhist monk, taking the Dharma name Huong Van Dai Do, Jiak Hong Tran Nan Tong, often simply referred to as Fat Hong's Buddhist emperor. His decision to renounce the throne and embrace monastic life at the Yen Tu Mountain, a sacred site for Vietnamese Buddhism, sent a powerful message throughout the land. It solidified the spiritual authority of Zen and demonstrated that the highest pursuit was not worldly power, but ultimate liberation. You can envision him exchanging his imperial robes for the simple monastic alms bowl, a profound transformation that spoke volumes. At Yen Tu, he established the Truc Lam Bamboo Forest Zen School, which you will explore in greater detail in the next section. This school became the pinnacle of his synthetic vision, building upon the foundations of the Thiao Duong lineage and elevating it to a distinctively Vietnamese national Zen tradition. He brought together the disparate threads of Zen practice that had existed in Vietnam, giving them a cohesive structure and a unified purpose. The Truc Lam school wasn't just another lineage. It was a crystallization of the Vietnamese spiritual identity. Tran Nan Tong's teachings emphasized entering the world, Zanat PP, a concept that underscores the practical, engaged nature of Vietnamese Zen. This wasn't about escaping from the world, but about engaging with it from a place of awakened awareness. He taught that enlightenment was not found in isolated contemplation alone, but in bringing compassion and wisdom into one's daily activities, one's family life, and one's societal responsibilities. You could be a farmer, a merchant, a scholar, or even an emperor, and still be on the path to liberation. This philosophy was revolutionary in its inclusivity and profoundly practical for the general populace. He also emphasized self-reliance and direct experience over mere scholasticism or ritualistic adherence. While he valued the scriptures and traditional practices, he constantly pointed to the importance of direct insight into one's own mind. He encouraged practitioners to look within, to realize their own inherent Buddha nature, rather than relying solely on external authorities or doctrines. This is a common thread in all Zen traditions, but Tran Nan Tong articulated it with a clarity and accessibility that resonated deeply with the Vietnamese spirit. His influence extended beyond his immediate disciples. He traveled extensively, preaching the Dharma, establishing temples, and training a new generation of monks and nuns who would carry on his legacy. His compassion was legendary, extending to all strata of society. He taught in a language that was accessible to everyone, using parables and simple analogies to convey profound truths. You can imagine the impact of such a figure, combining the gravitas of an emperor with the humility and wisdom of an enlightened master. Tran Nan Tong's vision for a harmonious society was holistic. He saw the cultivation of individual inner peace as directly contributing to the peace and stability of the nation. He believed that when individuals quieted their hearts, their actions would naturally become more compassionate, more ethical, and more aligned with the greater good. This is a powerful lesson, isn't it? The idea that true societal harmony begins with personal transformation. His passing in 1308 did not diminish his influence. In fact, it solidified his place as one of the most revered figures in Vietnamese history and spirituality. The Truc Lam Zen school, his enduring legacy, continued to flourish for centuries, deeply embedding his teachings into the cultural psyche. His life became a living testament to the possibility of blending worldly responsibility with profound spiritual awakening, proving that the path to quieting the heart was not reserved for the secluded few, but was open to all who sought it, regardless of their station in life. You are now prepared to explore the very essence of this school he founded, the Bamboo Forest School, where his vision truly took root and blossomed. Now, your journey takes you to the heart of Tran Nan Tong's legacy, a spiritual sanctuary nestled in the misty peaks of Yen Tu Mountain, the Bamboo Forest School, or Truc Lam Zen. This wasn't merely a monastic order, it was the definitive expression of early, modern Vietnamese Zen, a distinctively national tradition that synthesized centuries of spiritual development into a coherent and profoundly impactful path. If the Thiao Duong lineage laid the groundwork, Truc Lam built the towering edifice, making Zen accessible and deeply integrated into the Vietnamese consciousness. You must understand that Truc Lam was more than just a philosophical system. It was a living, breathing movement that sought to infuse every aspect of Vietnamese life with the spirit of Zen. Tran Nan Tong, as its founding patriarch, envisioned a Zen that transcended social strata, inviting everyone from emperors to common villagers to quiet their hearts and realize their inherent wisdom. This inclusivity was a radical departure from more exclusive, monastic-centric traditions, firmly establishing Zen as a path for all. What truly defined the Truc Lam school was its profound commitment to syncretism, building upon the foundations laid by the Thiao Duong lineage. This wasn't about diluting core Zen principles, but rather about enriching them through intelligent integration. You saw how Tran Nan Tong himself embodied the seamless blend of Buddhism, Confucianism, and Taoism within Truc Lam. This synthesis became the school's defining characteristic, a testament to its practical wisdom and deep understanding of the Vietnamese psyche. Imagine a scholar official, steeped in the rigorous ethical codes of Confucianism, finding in Truc Lam Zen a deeper wellspring of compassion and moral purity that transcended mere societal rules. Or a farmer, living intimately with the cycles of nature, recognizing the Taoist principles of effortless action and natural flow reflected in the Zen teachings of non-striving and acceptance. Truc Lam provided a framework where these seemingly disparate philosophies weren't at odds, but rather offered complementary insights into the nature of reality and the path to a harmonious life. This ability to bridge different intellectual and spiritual worlds made Truc Lam incredibly resilient and deeply relevant to the everyday lives of Vietnamese people. The practicality of practice was paramount within the Truc Lam school. It wasn't about abstract philosophical debates, but about direct experience and the cultivation of awareness in every moment. You weren't expected to abandon your daily responsibilities to become a monk. Instead, you were encouraged to infuse those very responsibilities with mindfulness. Whether you were cooking, cleaning, working in the fields, or engaging in court duties, each activity became a meditative practice. This emphasis on Zen in action meant that spiritual cultivation wasn't confined to specific times or places. It was a continuous, living practice woven into the fabric of ordinary life. This allowed for a wide embrace of the teachings, fostering a deep, pervasive sense of calm and clarity throughout society. Poetry and literature continued to play a central role in conveying the nuanced insights of Truk-Lam Zen. The masters of this school, including Tran Nan Tong himself and his two primary successors, Phap Loa and Hien Quang, were accomplished poets whose verses served as direct pointers to the nature of reality. They used evocative imagery, often drawn from the natural world, bamboo, mist, mountains, rivers, to express inexpressible truths. These poems weren't just beautiful, they were instruments of awakening, designed to bypass the intellect and resonate directly with the heart. You could read a simple verse and suddenly glimpse a profound truth about impermanence, non-duality, or the interconnectedness of all things. This poetic tradition made the teachings relatable and memorable, allowing them to be transmitted through generations. The entering the world Snow philosophy, championed by Tran Nan Tong, became a core tenet of Truk-Lam. This was a radical idea for its time, contrasting sharply with traditions that emphasized monastic seclusion as the primary path to enlightenment. Truk-Lam taught that true awakening wasn't about escaping the world, but about engaging with it fully, yet without attachment. It was about bringing the wisdom and compassion cultivated through practice into one's interactions, one's family, and one's community. This meant that a truly enlightened individual was not isolated, but actively contributed to the well-being of others, embodying the Bodhisattva ideal in daily life. Consider the implications of this for society. A ruler could be a Zen master, a merchant could be a Zen practitioner, a farmer could find awakening in the rhythm of their labor. This fundamentally democratized Zen, making it a viable and relevant path for people from all walks of life. The emphasis was not on formal monastic vows, but on the cultivation of an awakened heart in whatever circumstances one found oneself. You are witnessing a powerful example of how spiritual truth can be integrated into the very fiber of a nation's identity, rather than being confined to a select few. The lineage of succession within Truk-Lam was meticulously established by Tran Nan Tong, with Phap Loa and Hien Quang as his principal successors. These two figures played crucial roles in systematizing the teachings, expanding the school's influence, and ensuring its continuity. Phap Loa, known for his administrative acumen and his extensive writing, helped codify the Truk-Lam doctrines and oversaw the construction of numerous temples and stupas. Hien Quang, a brilliant scholar and poet, further refined the intellectual and artistic dimensions of the school, preserving its rich literary tradition. Their combined efforts solidified Truk-Lam's position as the preeminent Zen school in Vietnam for centuries. The Yen Tu mountain itself became a sacred focal point for the Truk-Lam school. It was here that Tran Nan Tong retreated after his abdication, and it became a central place for monastic training, pilgrimage, and the transmission of the Dharma. The serene, natural beauty of Yentu was seen as conducive to meditation and spiritual awakening, reflecting the Taoist appreciation for nature's wisdom. You can imagine the quiet contemplation that unfolded amidst its ancient trees and mist-shrouded peaks, a perfect setting for the gentle path. The rituals and ceremonies within Truc Lam were often simplified, reflecting the Zen emphasis on direct experience over elaborate forms. While certain rituals were maintained for communal practice and to honor ancestors, the focus remained squarely on the cultivation of insight through meditation and mindfulness. This was Zen stripped down to its essentials, yet without losing its profound depth or its compassionate core. It was about seeing clearly rather than performing elaborate gestures. In essence, the Truc Lam Zen school, under Tran Anh Han Tong and his successors, created a model of indigenous Vietnamese Buddhism that was both deeply rooted in universal Zen principles and uniquely adapted to the Vietnamese cultural and historical context. It was a tradition that fostered inner peace, ethical conduct, and compassionate engagement with the world, all without demanding a retreat from the world. You are gaining a profound appreciation for how this school laid the groundwork for a Zen that was gentle, accessible, and profoundly transformative for the Vietnamese people. This inclusive spirit set the stage for how Zen principles permeated the daily lives of lay practitioners, which you will explore next. You are now immersed in perhaps the most accessible and relevant aspect of early, modern Vietnamese Zen: how lay practice was woven into the very fabric of daily life. This wasn't a distant, esoteric path reserved for cloistered monks. It was a living, breathing approach to existence that permeated homes, marketplaces, and even imperial courts. The gentle path of early, modern Vietnamese Zen didn't demand a grand transformation of one's external circumstances, but a subtle, profound shift in one's internal landscape, making spiritual awakening achievable amidst the responsibilities and routines of everyday living. Imagine yourself as an ordinary person living during the Lai or Tran dynasties. You might be a rice farmer tilling the fields under the tropical sun, a merchant haggling in a bustling market, a scholar poring over ancient texts, or a mother tending to her children. For you, the idea of retreating to a mountain monastery for years of secluded meditation might be utterly impractical, even impossible. This is precisely where the genius of Vietnamese Zen, particularly as propagated by the Thao Duong and later the Truc Lam schools, truly shone. It offered a path where your very life, in all its mundane detail, became the crucible for awakening. The core teaching here was that enlightenment is not separate from samsara, the world of suffering and ordinary experience. In fact, it is found within it. This non-dualistic understanding meant that the sacred wasn't confined to temples or rituals. It was inherent in every moment, every breath, every action. You didn't need to seek a special, elevated state. You simply needed to perceive the inherent sacredness of the present. This radical inclusivity meant that everyone, regardless of their social standing or occupation, had the potential to realize their Buddha nature. Consider the concept of mindfulness in action. For a farmer, this meant not just mechanically tilling the soil, but being fully present with the earth, the water, the growing rice shoots. Each movement became a form of meditation, each breath a connection to the cycles of nature. For a merchant, it might involve conducting business with honesty and compassion, seeing the interconnectedness of buyer, and seller. Rather than simply focusing on profit, the act of haggling, often fraught with tension, could become an exercise in equanimity and clear communication. You can see how this transforms mundane tasks into opportunities for spiritual growth. The emphasis was not on complex intellectual understanding, but on direct experience. While scriptures were valued, they were seen as pointers, not the truth itself. The real teaching was found in the lived reality of each moment. This encouraged a pragmatic approach to spirituality. If a practice didn't yield tangible shifts in perception or a greater sense of peace, it was less valued than direct, experiential engagement. This resonated deeply with the practical nature of the Vietnamese people. Family life played a crucial role in this lay practice. Unlike some traditions that might view family as a distraction from spiritual pursuits, Vietnamese Zen integrated it. Filial piety, a cornerstone of Confucian ethics, was not abandoned but deepened. Honoring one's parents, caring for one's children, and maintaining harmonious family relationships became expressions of compassion and wisdom. Your home wasn't a hindrance to practice. It was the very ground upon which your practice unfolded, offering countless opportunities for patience, selfless service, and unconditional love. You also find that poetry and art were not merely cultural embellishments, but integral parts of lay practice. Many lay practitioners, particularly those of the literati class, expressed their spiritual insights through verse. Composing a poem about the moon, a mountain, or the sound of rain could be a contemplative act, a way to capture a moment of insight or express the inexpressible. These poems were often shared, becoming a form of collective spiritual exploration, allowing individuals to connect with the wisdom of others and deepen their own understanding. This cultivated a sensitive, appreciative awareness of the world around them, recognizing beauty and profundity in the ordinary. The practice of simple living and contentment was also central. While not demanding extreme asceticism, the teachings encouraged a detachment from excessive material desires and a cultivation of gratitude for what one had. This didn't mean renouncing possessions, but rather holding them lightly, understanding their impermanent nature, and avoiding attachment that could lead to suffering. You could own possessions, but you weren't owned by them. This fostered a sense of inner freedom and resilience, particularly valuable in times of societal upheaval. Another significant aspect was the engagement with the local community and ancestors. Zen practice was not solitary but communal. Lay practitioners would often gather at local pagodas or village temples for communal chanting, ceremonies, and listening to Dharma talks from traveling monks or enlightened lay teachers. The veneration of ancestors, a deeply ingrained Vietnamese tradition, was also integrated into Zen practice. Prayers and offerings to ancestors became a way to cultivate gratitude, acknowledge continuity, and practice compassion. Extending beyond the immediate family to the lineage itself, the teachings emphasized the inherent Buddha nature of all beings, reinforcing the idea that enlightenment was not something external to be acquired, but an intrinsic reality to be realized. This understanding fostered a profound sense of equality among people, blurring the lines between social classes and roles in the context of spiritual potential. It meant that the wisdom you sought was not far away, it was within you, waiting to be recognized. You're realizing that the gentle path isn't about avoiding challenges, but about meeting them with equanimity and wisdom. when conflicts arose within the family or community, or when personal suffering struck, the principles of mindfulness, non-attachment, and compassion provided a framework for navigating these difficulties with greater grace. Instead of reacting impulsively, practitioners were encouraged to pause, observe their reactions, and respond from a place of clarity rather than emotional entanglement. This approach transformed potential suffering into opportunities for deeper understanding and growth. This practical, integrated approach to Zen meant that the spiritual journey was not a separate compartment of life, but its very essence. It was about living fully, consciously, and compassionately, moment by moment. The quiet heart was not a heart devoid of emotion or engagement, but one that was steady, clear, and unburdened by attachment, capable of responding to life's ebb and flow with wisdom and grace. This profound integration of spiritual insight into the mundane set the stage for how poetry, in particular, became a powerful and widely utilized vehicle for direct spiritual expression and awakening in early, modern Vietnamese Zen. Your journey now takes a turn into the realm of the aesthetically profound, where poetry became a direct expression and vehicle for awakening in early, modern Vietnamese Zen. This wasn't merely about writing beautiful verses, it was about wielding language as a spiritual tool, a means to transcend conceptual thought and point directly to the ineffable nature of reality. Imagine the quiet contemplation that went into crafting each line, not for literary fame, but for the clarity of insight it could convey, both to the poet and to the reader. The Vietnamese people, deeply steeped in a rich literary tradition influenced by both indigenous oral forms and classical Chinese scholarship, found a natural resonance between the fluidity of poetry and the subtle insights of Zen. For Zen masters and lay practitioners alike, verse offered a unique medium to articulate experiences that defied ordinary prose, the sudden flash of enlightenment, the pervasive stillness of the mind, the paradoxical unity of existence. It allowed for ambiguity and suggestion, crucial elements for pointing to truths that could only be grasped intuitively. Consider the role of koans in other Zen traditions, paradoxical riddles designed to shatter intellectual constructs and provoke sudden awakening. In Vietnamese Zen, particularly within the Truc Lam school, poetry often served a similar function, though perhaps more gently and evocatively. A carefully crafted poem could, with a few well-chosen images, dismantle conventional understanding, revealing the emptiness of phenomena or the omnipresence of Buddha, nature. The beauty of the language itself could disarm the analytical mind, allowing deeper truths to penetrate. Many of the most revered Zen masters of this era were also accomplished poets. Tran Nan Tong himself, the emperor monk, left behind a collection of powerful and insightful poems that continue to be studied and cherished. His verses often reflected his personal journey from worldly ruler to enlightened sage, yet always pointed to universal truths. His successors, Phap Lo and Hien Quang, continued this tradition, enriching the Zen canon with their own profound poetic contributions. Hien Quang, in particular, was celebrated for his literary brilliance, demonstrating that intellectual and artistic prowess could serve the highest spiritual aims. You can envision a scene, a monk, perhaps after a long period of meditation, picking up a brush and ink, allowing the insights that had dawned in stillness to flow onto paper in the form of a poem. Or a lay scholar, amidst their daily duties, finding a moment of clarity and jotting down a verse that captured the fleeting nature of a cloud or the enduring presence of a mountain. These weren't mere intellectual exercises, they were acts of spontaneous expression, direct manifestations of an awakened mind. The act of creation itself became a practice, a way to embody the Dharma. The themes explored in this Zen poetry were rich and varied, yet always circled back to core Buddhist principles. You would encounter verses on impermanence, anicca, the fleeting nature of all phenomena, the beauty of change, non-self anatta, the illusory nature of a fixed, separate self, pointing to interconnectedness, suffering, dukkha, and its cessation, the recognition of suffering and the path to liberation from it, emptiness, sunyata, the ultimate unreality of all things, not as nihilism, but as boundless potential, but nature, the inherent awakening within all beings, waiting to be realized, mindfulness and meditation, the cultivation of present moment awareness, the beauty of nature, seeing the Dharma reflected in mountains, rivers, flowers and birds, reflecting Taoist influence, the integration of Zen with daily life, finding enlightenment in the mundane, in every action. This poetry wasn't just descriptive, it was transformative. It aimed to evoke a direct experience in the reader, to stir a similar awakening within them. The language was often simple, yet deeply layered with meaning, inviting contemplation and personal discovery. It allowed the teachings to bypass intellectual defenses and penetrate directly to the heart. Imagine reading a poem that, in just a few lines, could dissolve your anxieties and leave you with a profound sense of peace or a sudden understanding. The communal aspect of this poetic practice is also significant. These verses were often shared, recited, and commented upon within monastic communities and among lay practitioners. This fostered a shared understanding of the Dharma, creating a sense of collective spiritual inquiry. A particularly insightful poem might become a subject of discussion, a focal point for deeper meditation, allowing individuals to explore its nuances and unlock its deeper meanings together. This oral and literary tradition ensured the longevity and widespread dissemination of the teachings. You can observe how this emphasis on poetry reflects the broader Vietnamese cultural sensibility, which often favors subtlety, indirectness, and a deep appreciation for beauty, unlike some more didactic approaches to spiritual instruction. Zen poetry invited the reader to participate in the act of discovery, to find the truth within themselves, rather than merely being told what to believe. It was a gentle invitation to insight, delivered through the most exquisite form of human expression. This poetic legacy serves as a powerful reminder that spiritual wisdom isn't confined to dense philosophical treatises. It can be found in the delicate brushstroke of a character, the evocative imagery of a natural scene, or the rhythmic flow of a carefully constructed verse. The masters of early, modern Vietnamese Zen used poetry to sculpt silence, to give voice to the inexpressible, and to guide countless hearts towards the quietude of awakening. This integration of the aesthetic with the spiritual path is a hallmark of this tradition, setting the stage for how meditation, in this context, extended far beyond the formal cushion. You now stand on the precipice of understanding, one of the most transformative aspects of early, modern Vietnamese Zen, meditation beyond the cushion. This isn't about rigid, formal postures in a secluded monastery, though those practices certainly existed. Instead, it's about cultivating a continuous state of mindfulness and awareness that permeates every aspect of your daily life, transforming the mundane into the sacred. This is where the gentle path truly becomes a living practice, accessible to everyone, everywhere. Imagine for a moment that your entire life is your meditation mat. Every step you take, every word you speak, every task you perform, each is an opportunity to cultivate a profound state of presence. The masters of early, modern Vietnamese Zen, particularly within the inclusive Truc Lam school, didn't teach that spiritual practice was something separate from your everyday existence. On the contrary, they taught that true awakening blossomed precisely within the messy, vibrant reality of life itself. This concept is rooted in the Mahayana Buddhist understanding that samsara is nirvana. The world of suffering and conditioned existence is not fundamentally separate from the state of liberation. The difference lies solely in your perception, in the clarity of your mind. If you are awake and aware, even the most ordinary activities can become vehicles for profound insight. This means that the path to quieting the heart isn't about escaping the world, but about fully engaging with it, yet from a place of deep inner stillness. Think about the farmers of that era diligently working their rice paddies. Their actions, seemingly simple and repetitive, could become a profound meditation. The rhythmic bending and straightening, the feeling of mud between their toes, the sensation of the sun on their skin, the precise placement of each seedling, all could be opportunities for bare attention. There was no need for complex visualizations or intellectual analysis. Simply being fully present with the act of farming itself could lead to a deep connection with the earth and a profound sense of interconnectedness. For them, the paddy was their cushion, and the act of cultivation was their zazen. Similarly, for a merchant in the bustling marketplace, mindfulness meant conducting business with honesty and integrity, being fully present in negotiations, listening attentively to customers, and being aware of their own intentions. It was about seeing the interconnectedness of all transactions, understanding that their well-being was tied to the well-being of others. The clamor and distractions of the market didn't have to be obstacles. They could be conditions in which to practice equanimity and clarity amidst chaos. For scholars and officials, mindful practice could infuse their study and governance. Reading texts wasn't just about intellectual absorption. It was about internalizing wisdom and applying it with discernment. Making decisions for the state involved not just logical analysis, but also a deep sense of compassion and a clear, unbiased mind, free from personal gain or attachment. The act of writing, the brush strokes on paper, could become a meditative dance, each character imbued with intention and presence. The core principle here is dwelling in the present moment. This isn't a passive state, but an active, gentle engagement with whatever is arising, without judgment or resistance. When you eat, you eat. When you walk, you walk. When you speak, you speak. There is no separation between the doing and the being. This dissolves the illusion of a separate self-observing life, and instead, you become life itself, unfolding moment by moment. This continuous mindfulness naturally cultivates equanimity. Life, then as now, was full of ups and downs, joys and sorrows. When your practice extends beyond the formal cushion, you learn to meet both pleasant and unpleasant experiences with a steady, open heart. A compliment doesn't inflate your ego, and a criticism doesn't crush your spirit. You learn to observe phenomena arising and passing, understanding their impermanent nature, and thus freeing yourself from the reactive patterns that lead to suffering. The practice also emphasized simple awareness of the breath. This wasn't about controlling the breath, but simply noticing its natural rhythm as it enters and leaves the body. The breath, always present, always changing, yet always reliable, becomes an anchor to the present moment, a gentle reminder to return to awareness whenever the mind wanders. You could be sweeping the floor, carrying water, or attending a court meeting, and subtly, internally, you could be aware of your breath, grounding yourself in the here and now. Furthermore, this Zen encouraged self-observation without judgment. When thoughts, emotions, or physical sensations arose, the practice was not to suppress them or cling to them, but simply to acknowledge their presence without identification. This gentle witnessing creates space between you and your internal experiences, allowing them to arise and pass away naturally without getting entangled. This freedom from internal struggle is a profound source of inner quietude. You'll find that this approach to meditation is profoundly liberating. It means that every moment is a potential path to awakening. You don't need special conditions or a specific location to practice. Your everyday life, with all its challenges and blessings, becomes your most potent teacher. The little-known teachings are often these subtle shifts in perspective, these gentle invitations to be fully present, transforming every ordinary act into an extraordinary act of spiritual cultivation. This pervasive mindfulness naturally leads to a deeper understanding of the interconnectedness of all things, paving the way for the profound insight of the non-dual heart. As you delve deeper into the gentle path, you arrive at the very heart of Zen insight, the non-dual heart. This isn't a mere philosophical concept, it's a profound, experiential realization that dissolves the perceived separation between yourself and the world, between subject and object, between sacred and profane. Imagine the ultimate quieting of the heart, where the clamor of distinction and the illusion of self, other boundaries simply melt away, leaving behind a boundless, interconnected reality. In early, modern Vietnamese Zen, particularly as taught by the Truc Lam masters, this non-dual understanding was not an abstract ideal to be intellectualized, but a living truth to be embodied. They recognized that the root of much human suffering lay in the fundamental misconception of a separate, isolated self striving against an external world. The moment you perceive yourself as distinct from everything else, you create the conditions for attachment, aversion, and endless striving. The non-dual heart, conversely, recognizes the inherent unity of all phenomena. Consider the implications of this. If there is no fundamental separation between you and the tree outside your window, between you and the stranger walking past, or even between you and the very air you breathe, then compassion arises naturally. How could you harm what is not separate from yourself? How could you feel alienated from what is fundamentally interconnected with your own being? This isn't a forced empathy. It's an organic blossoming of understanding. The teachings often used simple, relatable metaphors to convey this profound truth. Imagine a wave in the ocean. The wave appears to be a distinct entity, rising and falling, seemingly separate from the vast body of water. Yet, it is entirely made of water. It is the water. The wave is not separate from the ocean, and the ocean is not separate from the wave. This is the essence of non-duality. While phenomena appear as distinct forms, They are all manifestations of the same underlying reality, the same Buddha nature or original mind. For practitioners of Vietnamese Zen, this meant that the pursuit of enlightenment was not about becoming something you were not, but about realizing what you already are. Your inherent Buddha nature wasn't a future attainment. It was your present reality, veiled only by the conceptual distinctions your mind habitually created. The goal was to dissolve these mental constructs, to see directly into the true nature of things. This deeply impacted their approach to daily life. If the sacred was not separate from the mundane, then every action could be an expression of the non-dual heart. When a monk swept the temple courtyard, he wasn't merely performing a chore, he was sweeping away mental defilements, recognizing the unity of cleaner and cleaned. When a layperson tended their garden, they were not just cultivating plants, they were participating in the ceaseless dance of creation and decay, seeing the interconnectedness of soil, water, seed, and sun. The concept of mind only, Kiam Dai Thali Si in Vietnamese, or Sitamatra, also played a significant role, emphasizing that all phenomena arise from the mind. This isn't to say that external reality doesn't exist, but that our experience of it is entirely a product of our perception and consciousness. By understanding the mind as the source of both delusion and liberation, practitioners could turn their attention inward, recognizing that the world they perceived was ultimately inseparable from their own awareness. This didn't lead to solipsism, but to a profound sense of responsibility for one's own perceptions and reactions. The non-dual heart also dissolves the dichotomy of samsara and nirvana. Instead of viewing them as two separate realms, one to be escaped and the other to be attained, the Zen masters taught that they are two sides of the same coin. Samsara is nirvana seen through the lens of delusion. Nirvana is samsara seen with the clarity of awakening. This radical acceptance of reality as it is, without needing to change or escape it, is a hallmark of the gentle path. It cultivates a profound sense of peace, because there is nowhere to go, nothing to achieve, and nothing to become that you are not already. This understanding also profoundly influenced the approach to suffering. When you experience pain, either physical or emotional, the non-dual perspective allows you to witness it without identifying with it as my suffering. It's an experience arising and passing, like a cloud in the sky of consciousness. This doesn't negate the pain, but it frees you from the secondary suffering of resistance and aversion to it. You learn to embrace all experiences as part of the unified flow of existence, allowing them to transform you rather than overwhelm you. The cultivation of the non-dual heart relied heavily on silent illumination, a MC Chio, a practice often associated with earlier Chinese Chan traditions, but deeply integrated into Vietnamese Zen. This involved simply resting in the natural state of awareness, allowing thoughts and phenomena to arise and pass without grasping or pushing them away. There was no object of meditation, no specific technique other than simply being. In this boundless, objectless awareness, the illusion of duality naturally dissolves, revealing the vast, open space of the non-dual mind. You find that this realization fundamentally alters your relationship with time, the past and future, as mental constructs lose their power. Only the eternal present remains. This radical presence, born of non-duality, is where true quietude resides. The heart is quiet not because it is empty of experience, but because it is full of the unified, undifferentiated flow of existence, without resistance or fragmentation. This dissolution of self, other distinctions, naturally leads to an outpouring of compassion. If all beings are fundamentally interconnected, part of the same vast tapestry of existence, then their suffering is your suffering, and their joy is your joy. This is not just a moral imperative, it's an organic consequence of seeing reality clearly. This deep wellspring of compassion, flowing from the non-dual heart, naturally leads to compassion in action, which is the next profound aspect of this gentle path you will explore, having recognized the profound insight of the non-dual heart, where the illusory separation between self and other dissolves. You are now ready to witness the natural blossoming of this understanding, compassion in action. In early, modern Vietnamese Zen, particularly within the Truc Lam tradition, compassion was not merely an abstract ideal or a virtuous sentiment, it was the spontaneous, tangible manifestation of an awakened heart, profoundly integrated into the social landscape. Imagine that sense of boundless interconnectedness you just explored. If all beings are fundamentally one, then suffering anywhere is suffering everywhere. A truly quieted heart isn't an isolated one. It's a heart that vibrates in resonance with the joys and sorrows of all sentient life. This understanding naturally compels a response, a desire to alleviate suffering and foster well-being, not out of duty, but out of an innate recognition of shared existence. For the Zen masters and lay practitioners of this era, compassion wasn't an add-on to their spiritual practice, it was its inevitable outcome. The deeper their insight into non-duality, the more boundless their compassion became. This wasn't merely about feeling sorry for others, it was about taking action, however small or grand, to benefit them. You can see how this seamlessly integrates spiritual realization with ethical conduct, making the path not just one of personal liberation, but of collective flourishing. Consider the example of Tran Nan Tong himself. As an emperor, his compassion manifested in his wise and just governance. He didn't rule arbitrarily, he ruled with a deep sense of responsibility for his people's well-being. His decision to abdicate the throne and dedicate his life to propagating the Dharma was, in itself, an immense act of compassion aimed at sharing the path to peace with as many as possible. He recognized that true peace for the nation stemmed from the inner peace of its citizens. He walked among the people, teaching and comforting, embodying the bodhisattva ideal of selfless service. That entering the world, a philosophy of Truc Lam Zen directly underpins this concept of compassion in action. It explicitly taught that true spiritual practice involves engaging with the world, not escaping it. For those who sought liberation, it meant bringing their cultivated wisdom and empathy into their families, their communities, and their professional lives. A truly awakened person was not detached from suffering, but actively involved in alleviating it. You would have seen this compassion manifest in various ways within the Vietnamese social landscape: community support. Villages and families, often guided by Buddhist principles, formed strong mutual support networks. Neighbors helped neighbors during harvests or times of hardship. This collective spirit, rooted in a sense of shared humanity, was a practical expression of compassion, care for the vulnerable. Temples often served as centers for charity, providing food, shelter, and comfort to the poor, the sick, and the elderly. Monks and nuns, though living simply, often dedicated themselves to acts of social welfare, seeing their service as an extension of their spiritual vows. This was not a detached benevolence, but an active participation in easing the burdens of others. Ethical conduct in commerce, for merchants and traders who embraced Zen. Compassion in action meant conducting business with honesty, fairness, and a genuine concern for the well-being of their customers and employees. Exploitation would be seen as a violation of the interconnectedness of all beings. This fostered a sense of trust and ethical responsibility within economic interactions. Harmony in family life. Within the family unit, compassion meant cultivating patience, forgiveness, and unconditional love. Parents raised their children with wisdom and empathy, and children honored their elders with respect and care. Disputes were approached with a desire for reconciliation and understanding, reflecting the non-dual recognition that family members are inseparable. Peacemaking and conflict resolution. Even in times of conflict, Zen principles encouraged seeking peaceful resolutions and minimizing harm. While Tran Nan Tong was a formidable military leader when necessary, his ultimate goal was always peace and stability for his people, reflecting a deep-seated desire to alleviate suffering caused by war. His post-war policies often focused on reconciliation and rebuilding, rather than retribution. This active, engaged compassion wasn't about self-sacrifice for its own sake, but a natural outflow of wisdom prajna. The non-dual heart, seeing clearly the interconnectedness of all phenomena, understands that true self-interest lies in the well-being of the whole. When you act with compassion, you are not just helping another, you are benefiting yourself, for the other is ultimately not separate from you. This creates a virtuous cycle where insight fuels compassion and compassionate action deepens insight. The Zen masters also taught the importance of mindful speech and action. Every word spoken, every gesture made, had the potential to alleviate or create suffering. Cultivating compassion in action meant being aware of the impact of one's words and deeds, striving to speak kindly, act benevolently, and live in a way that fostered harmony rather than discord. This subtle attention to everyday interactions is a powerful form of compassion. Often overlooked in favor of grand gestures, you can also see the subtle influence of karma in this approach. While not a rigid system of reward and punishment, the understanding of cause and effect meant that compassionate actions naturally led to positive outcomes, both for the individual and the collective. Conversely, actions driven by ignorance or ill will would inevitably lead to suffering. This provided a practical incentive for ethical and compassionate living, not out of fear, but out of a clear understanding of reality. The gentle path of early, modern Vietnamese Zen, therefore, was not a retreat from the world, but a profound engagement with it, driven by a deep wellspring of compassion that flowed from the realization of the non-dual heart. It taught that true spiritual progress was measured not just by one's internal peace, but by the extent to which that peace contributed to the well-being and harmony of the entire world. This profound integration of compassion into every aspect of life provided a powerful antidote to suffering, guiding individuals through the inevitable challenges of existence. Now, let's pivot to understanding these obstacles to awakening and the specific remedies offered by this tradition. You've traversed the expansive landscape of Vietnamese Zen, understanding its roots, its key figures, and its compassionate engagement with the world. Now, as with any spiritual journey, you must confront the inevitable, obstacles to awakening. Even on the gentle path, hindrances arise, clouding the heart and obscuring the clear light of wisdom. Early modern Vietnamese Zen, rooted in practical application, offered clear, accessible teachings for identifying these common impediments and, more importantly, for quieting them. Imagine your heart as a clear pool of water, reflecting the sky and all phenomena with perfect clarity. When obstacles arise, they are like mud stirred up in that pool, clouding the reflection and distorting your perception. The Zen masters didn't preach a path free of challenges, but a path equipped with the tools to skillfully navigate them. They understood that the very act of confronting and transforming these hindrances is integral to the deepening of insight. The core obstacles, rooted in universal human experience, were often framed within the Buddhist concept of the 5 hindrances. Enji Guaif, albeit often discussed with a practical, less dogmatic approach. Sensory desire, Tem DC. This is the craving for pleasant experiences, sights, sounds, smells, tastes, and touches, and the attachment to them. It's the restless longing for more, or for things to be different than they are. In the context of daily life, this could manifest as an insatiable desire for wealth, status, or even just a particular comfort. The remedy offered by Vietnamese Zen was not suppression, but mindful observation and non-attachment. You were encouraged to simply notice the arising of desire, its pull, and its fleeting nature, without clinging to it or acting on it compulsively. By observing desire without judgment, its power over you naturally diminishes, and the heart finds a quieter equilibrium. Ill will or aversion, S and Hen. This encompasses anger, hatred, resentment, and any form of negativity directed towards others or oneself. It's the desire for unpleasant experiences to cease, or for things to be other than they are. In the close-knit communities of early Vietnam, conflicts inevitably arose. The Zen remedy for ill will was profound and practical cultivation of loving kindness, TB, and forgiveness. You were taught to see the shared humanity in those who provoked anger, recognizing that their actions often stemmed from their own suffering or ignorance. Practicing compassion, even towards those who caused difficulty, was seen as a powerful antidote, transforming the heart's reactive patterns into a spacious acceptance. Sloth and torpor, Sevon Trem, the D mine. This is characterized by dullness of mind, mental sluggishness, lack of energy, and drowsiness. It's the opposite of clear, vibrant awareness. For practitioners engaged in daily life, this could mean losing focus in their work, feeling unmotivated to practice, or simply feeling mentally foggy. The remedy lay in energizing alertness and purposeful action. Rather than succumbing to dullness, one was encouraged to gently re-engage with the present moment, perhaps through mindful walking, a change of posture, or a conscious breath. Recognizing the purpose of one's actions, even the most mundane, could also serve to dispel lethargy, restlessness and worry. Trago si esprit quoi. This is the agitated mind, constantly flitting from one thought to another, accompanied by anxiety, regret, or concern for the future. For lay practitioners, this could be the worry about crops, family, or political instability. The Zen teaching emphasized anchoring the mind in the present moment. This often involved focusing on the breath or on the sensations of a physical activity, gently returning the mind whenever it strayed. Understanding the impermanent nature of all phenomena also helped to loosen the grip of worry. If all things are constantly changing, then clinging to outcomes only creates more agitation. Skeptical doubt, no gi. This isn't healthy inquiry, but rather a paralyzing uncertainty about the path, the teachings, or one's own ability to practice. It's the internal voice that questions whether the effort is worthwhile or if awakening is truly possible. The remedy was direct experience and trust in the lineage. Through consistent practice, even small insights would begin to chip away at doubt. Additionally, seeing the clear example of enlightened masters and their unwavering peace fostered a deep trust in the efficacy of the path. The emphasis on seeing for oneself, rather than blind belief, was crucial here. Doubts were dissolved through personal verification, not suppression. Beyond these classical hindrances, early modern Vietnamese Zen also addressed more culturally specific or pervasive obstacles. The attachment to status and reputation, for instance, could be a powerful hindrance, particularly in a hierarchical society. The antidote was to cultivate humility and to understand the emptiness of worldly accolades. An emperor like Tran Han Tong, renouncing his throne for the monastic life, served as the ultimate example of letting go of worldly attachments. Another common obstacle was ignorance, mind, the fundamental misunderstanding of the true nature of reality. While encompassing all other hindrances, ignorance was specifically addressed through direct insight, too, cultivated through meditation and contemplation of the Dharma. It wasn't about intellectual accumulation of knowledge, but a clear, penetrating vision that cut through delusion. The poetic expressions of Zen masters often served as direct pointers to dispel this ignorance. The Zen masters also emphasized the dangers of spiritual pride, which could arise once a practitioner experienced some initial insights or moments of peace. The remedy for this was a constant return to beginner's mind and a deep appreciation for the vastness of the path that lay ahead. Recognizing the interconnectedness of all beings also naturally fostered humility, understanding that any wisdom gained was ultimately for the benefit of all. Ultimately, the gentle path offered a consistent, unwavering instruction. The answer to these obstacles lay not in fighting them, but in observing them with a spacious, non-judgmental awareness. By recognizing them for what they are, temporary mental states, not intrinsic aspects of your true self, their power dissipates. The quieting of the heart, then, was not about eliminating all thoughts and emotions, but about learning to relate to them in a way that did not disturb the inherent stillness of the mind. This cultivation of wisdom in the face of hindrances naturally underscores the indispensable role of a master's guidance, a subject you will explore next. You have now navigated the internal landscape of obstacles, understanding how the gentle path offers remedies for the mind's agitations. This leads you directly to the indispensable role of the master, the Zen teacher whose profound, often unstated, guidance illuminated the path for countless practitioners in early, modern Vietnamese Zen. Imagine a spiritual landscape where direct transmission of insight was paramount, where books and theories were mere pointers, and the living wisdom flowed directly from an awakened heart to a receptive one. In the context of early, modern Vietnamese Zen, particularly within the Truc Lam tradition, the master was far more than an instructor or a scholar. They were a living embodiment of the Dharma, a walking testament to the realization of the quieted heart. Their very presence, their way of being, their spontaneous responses to situations, all served as direct teachings, bypassing the need for extensive verbal explanations. This emphasis on mind-to-mind transmission was a cornerstone of Zen, echoing the legendary story of the Buddha holding up a flower, and only Mahakoshyapa understanding its silent teaching with a smile. Think of the relationship between a master and a disciple not as a teacher-student dynamic in the conventional sense, but as a deeper, almost familial bond. The disciple's role was one of sincere seeking and deep trust, while the master's role was to perceive the unique karmic conditions and predispositions of each individual, offering precisely the right insight or challenge at the opportune moment. This often meant silent guidance, a subtle shift in gaze, a sudden question, or simply creating the space for the disciple to discover truth for themselves. The master's primary function was to help the disciple cut through delusion and realize their own inherent Buddha nature. They weren't there to impart new knowledge, but to help remove the veils that obscured what was already present. This could involve challenging the disciples' preconceived notions, pointing out their attachments, or simply remaining silent when the mind was ripe for insight. It was a subtle art, requiring profound wisdom and compassion. Consider the role of Tran Nan Tong as a master. After his abdication, he traveled extensively, not merely lecturing, but engaging with people directly. His presence, his serene demeanor, and his insightful responses to questions were powerful teachings in themselves. He didn't just teach about enlightenment, he embodied it. His very life became a living example of how to integrate spiritual wisdom with worldly responsibility, inspiring others to follow suit. His successors, Fap Lo and Hien Kwang, continued this tradition, each bringing their unique qualities to the role of master, yet maintaining the core principle of direct spiritual transmission. The teachings of the master were often delivered through direct encounter, often during personal interviews at GPG or during communal Dharma talks. These encounters were not always comfortable. A master might use a sharp word, a seemingly illogical question, or even a moment of silence to break the disciples' habitual patterns of thought. The goal was to jolt the mind out of its conceptual framework, forcing it into a direct experience of reality. This often required the disciple to let go of their intellectual understanding and open themselves to a deeper, intuitive grasp. You might wonder how such unstated guidance could be effective. It lies in the master's profound emptiness of self and their deep connection to the true nature of reality. When a master speaks or acts from this place of non-duality, their words and actions carry a resonance that transcends their literal meaning. They become direct pointers to the truth, capable of igniting a spark of recognition in the disciple's own mind. The master's mind reflects the disciple's mind without distortion, allowing them to see their own delusions clearly. Another crucial aspect of the master's role was to provide spiritual refuge and support. While the path encouraged self-reliance, it also recognized the inherent difficulties and moments of doubt that arise. The master served as a steadfast guide, a source of encouragement, and a living example of unwavering commitment. Their unwavering faith in the disciple's inherent Buddha nature was often what sustained the disciple through challenging periods of practice. The relationship also fostered a deep sense of lineage and continuity. The master was not just an individual. They were a link in a long chain of awakened beings, transmitting the Dharma from generation to generation. This gave practitioners a sense of belonging to a profound tradition, grounding their individual efforts within a larger historical and spiritual context. Trust in the lineage, therefore, was intertwined with trust in the master. Even when the master wasn't physically present, their teachings lived on through their disciples and through the koans and poetic verses they left behind. These were not just records of past insights, but living tools for continued practice. A disciple might contemplate a master's poem for days, weeks, or even years, allowing its meaning to unfold within their own experience, eventually leading to their own insight. The master's wisdom, even in absence, continued to guide. Ultimately, the role of the master in early, modern Vietnamese Zen was to guide the practitioner to a point where they no longer needed external guidance. The master's aim was to empower the disciple to become their own master, to realize the inherent wisdom that already resided within them. The process was akin to a skilled gardener tending a seed, providing the right conditions, removing obstacles, and allowing the inherent potential of the seed to blossom into its full form. This profound, often subtle, guidance was what truly allowed hearts to quiet, leading them towards an understanding of the deeper meaning behind the rituals and symbols that adorned their path. You have now journeyed through the profound depths of early, modern Vietnamese Zen, understanding its core principles and the pivotal role of the awakened master. Now, turn your gaze to the seemingly external aspects of this tradition, ritual, and symbolism. At first glance, these might appear to be mere formalities, perhaps even distractions from the direct, experiential path of Zen. However, in this tradition, rituals were never empty gestures. They were carefully designed containers for spiritual meaning, silent teachers, and profound invitations to deepen awareness. Imagine a tranquil pagoda nestled amongst verdant hills, the air thick with the scent of incense and the murmur of chanting. You might observe monks and lay practitioners performing a series of prescribed movements, perhaps bowing before an altar, making offerings, or reciting sutras. To an outsider, these might seem like adherence to rigid forms. But in Vietnamese Zen, particularly within the Truc Lam school, the emphasis was on infusing every action with mindfulness and intention. The ritual itself was a form of meditation, a way to train the mind to be fully present and engaged, even in the most repetitive acts. The masters taught that the true meaning of ritual lay not in its external performance, but in its internal cultivation. Each gesture, each word, each symbolic object was a pointer to a deeper truth. For instance, the act of bowing was not merely a sign of respect to a Buddha statue, it was a profound act of humility, a relinquishing of ego, and a recognition of the Buddha, nature within oneself and all beings. As you bowed, you were invited to release attachment to self, allowing the posture to align your physical form with your spiritual intention. Consider the role of offerings at the altar: incense, flowers, fruit, candles. These weren't bribes to a deity, but symbolic acts of letting go and gratitude. The incense, with its fragrant smoke rising and dissipating, symbolized impermanence and the spread of the Dharma. The flowers, beautiful but fleeting, pointed to the transient nature of all phenomena. The fruit, offering its sweetness, represented the fruits of spiritual practice and the generosity of the Dharma. The candles, illuminating the darkness, symbolized wisdom dispelling ignorance. Each offering, therefore, became a silent contemplation on core Zen principles, a way to embody understanding through action. Chanting of sutras and mantras was another significant ritualistic practice. While the emphasis in Zen is often on direct experience beyond words, the rhythmic recitation of sacred texts served multiple purposes. It could quiet the restless mind, focusing attention on the sound and meaning. It acted as a communal practice, fostering a sense of unity and shared purpose among practitioners. Moreover, the words of the sutras themselves, often containing profound insights, could subtly penetrate the mind, ripening conditions for awakening. You were not just reciting, you were listening to the Dharma, allowing its vibrations to resonate within your very being. Symbolism was woven into the very architecture and iconography of the pagodas. The tranquil gardens, often featuring rocks, water, and sparse vegetation, were designed to evoke a sense of naturalness and stillness, reflecting Taoist aesthetics and Zen's appreciation for simplicity and emptiness. The central image of the Buddha, often depicted in meditation, served as a constant reminder of the awakened state, an embodiment of the peace that was accessible to all. Even the layout of the temple complex might subtly reflect the journey of enlightenment, guiding the practitioner from the outer world of delusion to the inner sanctuary of wisdom. The ritual of tea ceremony, while perhaps less formalized than in other Zen traditions, often held symbolic meaning in Vietnamese Zen. The simple act of preparing and sharing tea became a practice of mindfulness, presence, and connection. The warmth of the cup, the aroma, the taste, all were opportunities to engage the senses fully and cultivate appreciation for the present moment. It was a shared moment of quiet contemplation, a subtle communion between individuals, free from the chatter of ego. Furthermore, ancestor veneration, a deeply ingrained aspect of Vietnamese culture, was integrated into the fabric of Zen practice. While not strictly a Buddhist ritual in its origin, the Zen tradition incorporated it, imbuing it with layers of spiritual meaning. Offering prayers and respects to ancestors became an act of compassion, extending loving kindness to those who had passed. It was also a recognition of interconnectedness and continuity, understanding that one's present existence was inextricably linked to the countless generations before them. This practice fostered gratitude and a deep sense of belonging within a vast, unfolding lineage. The masters understood that for many, especially lay practitioners, rituals provided a framework for discipline and focus. They offered a tangible way to engage with the spiritual path amidst the demands of daily life. By engaging in these practices with intention, even if the deeper meaning wasn't immediately apparent, the mind could gradually be trained, leading to subtler insights over time. The rituals were not ends in themselves, but skillful means dasopaya to quiet the heart and prepare the mind for deeper realization. You realize that these rituals and symbols, rather than being rigid dogma, were living expressions of the Dharma, constantly reinterpreted and imbued with fresh meaning by each generation of practitioners. They served as a bridge between the conceptual understanding of the teachings and the direct, intuitive experience of awakening. The beauty of their simplicity and their profound symbolism allowed the gentle path to permeate the culture deeply, guiding individuals not just through spiritual practices, but through the tumultuous currents of history itself. This deep integration of Zen within the Vietnamese social and political landscape made it incredibly resilient, even in the face of significant upheaval. you have now seen the practical application of Zen principles in daily life and the profound meaning embedded within its rituals. Your journey now takes you to a particularly compelling aspect of early, modern Vietnamese Zen, its remarkable resilience and flourishing Zen in tumultuous times. Imagine a spiritual path that not only survived periods of immense political upheaval, foreign invasion, and social change, but actually deepened and became more vital precisely because of these challenges. This demonstrates the inherent strength and adaptability of the gentle path when put to the ultimate test. The Lai and Tran dynasties, while periods of great cultural flourishing for Vietnam, were by no means devoid of conflict. You've already glimpsed the fierce Mongol Yuan invasions that Tran Nan Tong, the Zen emperor, so famously repelled. These were existential threats, forcing the nation to rally its resources and its spirit. It was precisely during such periods of intense external pressure that Vietnamese Zen did not retreat into isolated monasteries, but rather stepped forward to offer guidance, solace, and a unifying spiritual framework. Consider how these tumultuous times actually sharpened the focus of Zen practice. When life is uncertain, when external security is constantly challenged, the ephemeral nature of worldly attachments becomes strikingly clear. This existential clarity often pushes individuals towards deeper spiritual inquiry. The impermanence of political power, of material possessions, and even of life itself became a direct teaching, reinforcing the Zen emphasis on non-attachment and the cultivation of inner peace that could not be disturbed by external circumstances. The entering the world, Nekpi, the philosophy of the Truk Lam school, championed by Tran Nan Tong, proved to be incredibly robust in these challenging periods. Instead of advocating for withdrawal, it encouraged practitioners to engage skillfully and compassionately with the realities of their time. This meant that monks and lay practitioners were not detached observers. They were active participants in society, bringing their cultivated wisdom to bear on the problems facing their communities and nation. For instance, during times of invasion, Zen monks often served as spiritual advisors to emperors and generals, not just offering blessings, but providing counsel rooted in clear-mindedness and strategic insight devoid of personal ambition. Their commitment to peace and non-violence did not equate to passivity. Instead, it inspired them to contribute to the defense of their homeland with a courageous heart, understanding that protecting their people and their way of life was an act of profound compassion. You can imagine the moral fortitude and unwavering resolve that Zen practice instilled in leaders, enabling them to make difficult decisions from a place of clarity rather than fear. Furthermore, Zen temples often became centers of refuge and community support during periods of instability. People displaced by war or hardship could find temporary shelter, sustenance, and spiritual comfort within their walls. The communal spirit fostered by the Dharma transcended social divisions, creating a sense of solidarity and mutual aid when society was otherwise fragmented. This practical altruism was a living embodiment of the compassion in action you previously explored. The very act of maintaining spiritual practice amidst chaos was, in itself, an act of resilience. Whether it was a farmer continuing their mindful work despite the threat of invasion, or a scholar finding solace and insight in poetry even as their world shifted, the consistent dedication to quieting the heart provided an internal anchor. This inner stability allowed individuals to navigate external storms with a greater sense of equanimity and hope. The subtle hum of meditation, the rhythmic chanting, the quiet contemplation continued, providing a consistent spiritual current beneath the turbulent surface of daily life. The teachings on impermanence, anicca, became particularly potent. When faced with the loss of loved ones, homes, or stability, the understanding that all things are transient offered a paradoxical comfort. While not denying the pain of loss, it helped practitioners avoid clinging to what was inevitably passing, thus reducing secondary suffering. This allowed them to adapt, to rebuild, and to find new ways forward, rather than being paralyzed by grief or despair. Moreover, the syncretic nature of Vietnamese Zen, its comfortable integration of Buddhist, Confucian, and Taoist elements, made it highly adaptable. It wasn't a rigid dogma that might break under pressure. Instead, its philosophical breadth allowed it to resonate with diverse segments of the population and to find relevance in varying circumstances. This intellectual flexibility was a source of great strength, enabling Zen to provide a unifying vision for a diverse society. Even the language and literature of Zen, often expressed through poetry, played a vital role in times of turmoil. Poetic verses, imbued with Zen insight, could be easily shared and remembered, transmitting messages of resilience, hope, and the impermanence of suffering. They offered solace and inspiration, reminding people of their inherent strength and the possibility of finding peace even in the darkest hours. These artistic expressions acted as cultural glue, binding people together through shared wisdom. You realize that the gentle path of early, modern Vietnamese Zen was not fragile, it was incredibly robust. Its strength lay not in rigid doctrine or external power, but in its profound practicality. Its deep integration into everyday life and its unwavering focus on the cultivation of inner peace and wisdom. It taught that true quietude of the heart was not achieved by avoiding life's challenges, but by meeting them with open eyes and a steady mind, transforming adversity into an opportunity for deeper awakening. This enduring spirit, forged in the crucible of history, echoes through time, offering timeless wisdom for your own journey. You have now traced the extraordinary journey of early, modern Vietnamese Zen through its historical foundations, its pivotal figures, and its robust capacity to thrive amidst turmoil. You've witnessed how a gentle path could be so profoundly resilient. Now, as you stand in the present moment, you are invited to draw direct parallels between these whispers of the past and the challenges of your present. The little-known teachings for quieting the heart are not relics, they are living instructions, profoundly relevant to the anxieties and complexities of your own modern life. Imagine the relentless pace of your day-to-day existence, the constant flood of information, the demands of work and family, the pervasive digital noise, the ever-present feeling of needing to do more, be more. This modern landscape, though vastly different from Lai, Tran Vietnam, creates its own forms of internal turbulence. Just as people then grappled with invasions and political shifts, you grapple with stress, burnout, anxiety, and a pervasive sense of disconnection. The quiet heart, then as now, is not a luxury, it is a necessity. Consider the core Zen principle of mindfulness, Cheo Yin Niu. In a world of multitasking and perpetual distraction, the ability to simply be present with one task, one conversation, one breath, is a revolutionary act. The Vietnamese Zen masters taught meditation beyond the cushion, transforming every mundane act into a practice? Can you bring that same presence to your own life? Eating mindfully, listening fully to a loved one, consciously performing a chore. Each becomes an opportunity to quiet the internal chatter and anchor yourself in the here and now. This isn't about escaping your responsibilities. It's about infusing them with a quality of awareness that transforms them from burdens into opportunities for peace. The understanding of impermanence, RVEVNG, so powerfully reinforced by the tumultuous times in ancient Vietnam, offers profound solace in your own era of rapid change. Jobs change, relationships evolve, technology disrupts, and even your own physical body is constantly shifting. The modern tendency is to cling to what is familiar, creating anxiety when things inevitably change. These ancient teachings remind you that stability is not found in external circumstances, but in your ability to recognize and accept the ceaseless flow of life. When you embrace impermanence, you free yourself from the suffering of attachment and open yourself to the natural unfolding of existence. The non-dual heart, which dissolves the illusion of separation, speaks directly to the pervasive sense of isolation and fragmentation in modern society. In a world often driven by division and competition, these teachings invite you to recognize your fundamental interconnectedness with all beings, with nature, and with the universe itself. This understanding fosters genuine compassion at Beth, not as a moral imperative, but as an organic outflow of recognizing shared humanity. When you see others as extensions of yourself, acts of kindness, empathy, and service become natural and effortless. This can be a powerful antidote to loneliness and social discord. Think about the obstacles to awakening: sensory desire, ill will, sloth, restlessness, and doubt that the Zen masters addressed. Are these not the very struggles you face today? The endless pursuit of gratification through consumerism, sensory desire, the anger and polarization seen online and in society's ill will, the mental fog and procrastination fueled by digital overload, sloth, the constant anxiety and overthinking about the future's restlessness, and the pervasive cynicism and loss of faith, doubt. The remedies offered: mindful observation, cultivation of kindness, energizing alertness, present moment anchoring, and direct experience, are as potent now as they were centuries ago. The role of the master may seem distant in your modern world, but the essence of that guidance remains. While you may not have a physical Zen master in your immediate vicinity, the teachings themselves, the writings, the poetry, and the very spirit of the lineage serve as guiding lights. You can find masters in the wisdom traditions you study, in the insights that resonate within you, and in the quiet moments when your own inherent wisdom speaks. The journey to self-reliance in the Dharma is still the ultimate goal, fostering your own inner authority. Even the rituals and symbols, seemingly archaic, offer profound lessons for modern life. They remind you of the power, a way to slow down, to honor the present moment, and to connect with something larger than your individual anxieties. The gentle path itself offers a counter-narrative to the prevailing modern ethos of aggressive striving and relentless competition. It teaches that true strength lies not in force, but in flexibility, not in acquisition, but in letting go, not in controlling the world, but in quieting the heart. This approach can transform your relationship with stress, allowing you to move through challenges with greater equanimity rather than being overwhelmed by them. These little-known teachings from early modern Vietnamese Zen are not academic curiosities. They are a timeless wellspring of wisdom for the modern soul. They offer a profound yet accessible framework for navigating the complexities of your own life, guiding you towards an inner peace that is independent of external circumstances. The challenges may have changed, but the fundamental human yearning for a quiet heart remains the same. These ancient whispers offer a clear, compassionate response to that yearning, inviting you to embody these truths in your own journey, which, far from being over, is just beginning to unfold with newfound awareness. You have now journeyed through the rich tapestry of early, modern Vietnamese Zen, from its ancient roots and key figures to its practical integration into daily life and its resilience amidst turmoil. You've seen how its little-known teachings for quieting the heart are not just historical artifacts, but living wisdom, profoundly relevant to your own modern existence. This final section is not an ending, but a gentle turn in the path. An invitation for your journey continues. The wisdom you've absorbed is not meant to remain theoretical. It is meant to be embodied, to become the very ground upon which your life unfolds. Imagine the seeds of understanding that have been planted within you throughout this journey. The concept of mindfulness in action, transforming mundane tasks into sacred moments. The profound peace that arises from embracing impermanence. The boundless compassion that flows from recognizing the non-dual heart. The skillful navigation of life's inevitable obstacles, and the quiet, unwavering guidance found both externally and, ultimately, within yourself. These are not just ideas. They are living principles, waiting to be cultivated in the soil of your own experience. The gentle path of early, modern Vietnamese Zen is not about achieving some distant, impossible state of perfection. It's about cultivating a subtle, yet profound shift in how you relate to yourself, to others, and to the world around you. It's about recognizing that the quiet heart isn't a heart devoid of emotion or challenge, but one that is steady, clear, and unburdened by attachment, capable of responding to life's ebby and flow with wisdom and grace. Your quiet heart is not a destination to be reached, but a continuous practice of returning to the present moment, again and again. Consider your daily life now through the lens of these teachings. When you encounter a stressful situation, can you pause, take a conscious breath, and observe the rising tension without immediately reacting? This is the practice of mindfulness, learned from those ancient Vietnamese practitioners who navigated invasions and social change with equanimity. When you feel the pull of desire or the sting of irritation, can you simply acknowledge it, understanding its fleeting nature rather than letting it consume you? This is the application of the remedies for the 5 hindrances, turning internal struggles into opportunities for liberation. The integration of Zen into everyday life, so central to the Thao Dong and Truc Lam schools, offers you a powerful template. Your home can be your temple, your work can be your meditation, and your interactions with loved ones can be your deepest spiritual practice. You don't need to retreat from the world to find peace. Rather, you are invited to bring peace into the world through your awakened presence. This means seeing the sacred in the mundane, understanding that enlightenment is not separate from your ordinary existence. The poetry of the Zen masters, used as a direct pointer to truth, encourages you to cultivate your own sensitivity and perception. Can you find beauty in the fleeting moments of your day? can you express your own insights, not necessarily in verse, but in how you live and interact. This cultivates an appreciative awareness, deepening your connection to life. And remember the enduring power of compassion in action. The realization of the non-dual heart naturally leads to a desire to alleviate suffering. This doesn't mean taking on the world's burdens, but simply acting from a place of kindness and understanding in your daily interactions. A compassionate word, a helpful gesture, a moment of deep listening. These are the small, yet profound expressions of an awakened heart that ripple outwards, creating harmony. Your journey continues not by replicating the lives of ancient monks or emperors, but by drawing inspiration from their wisdom and applying it to your unique circumstances. It's about finding your own gentle path, listening to the whispers of your own heart, and cultivating the clarity and peace that are inherently yours. The little-known teachings are now less little known to you. They are living invitations to transform your perception and deepen your experience of life. The enduring legacy of early, modern Vietnamese Zen is its testament to the universality of the human spiritual quest and the accessibility of its ultimate fulfillment. It proves that a quiet heart is not a rare gift, but a cultivated state, available to all who commit to the journey with sincerity and patience. As you step forward, remember that the true master is within, and the real teaching is the life you are living, fully present, fully aware, and fully engaged. This journey through early, modern Vietnamese Zen has been an invitation to pause, to listen, and to feel the subtle current of wisdom that has flowed through centuries. It's a reminder that the path to a quiet heart isn't always dramatic or overtly challenging. Sometimes, it's a gentle whisper, a profound understanding woven into the fabric of everyday life. May this understanding guide your own steps, illuminating your path with peace and clarity. This journey began by inviting you into a world far removed from your own, yet intimately connected by the shared human desire for peace and understanding. You've walked alongside emperors and farmers, scholars and monks, discovering how the profound insights of Zen were seamlessly woven into the tapestry of everyday Vietnamese life. The whispers of the past, often subtle and profound, have offered not rigid doctrines, but adaptable frameworks for quieting the heart amidst life's inevitable ebb and flow. You've learned that the gentle path is not one of avoidance, but of engaged presence. That wisdom is not found in escape, but in embracing reality with an open, non-dual heart. May these little-known teachings now become your trusted companions, guiding you towards the quietude and clarity that are always within reach. The path is not a destination, but a continuous unfolding, and every moment is an opportunity to walk it with grace.